Today, when I got on Facebook, I noticed something that's a bit different from usual. First, I noticed that there are men who are actually standing up for their rights now. That's a good thing. You know, we're living in a pretty screwed up world where a woman can get away with the things that she did by playing on her gender or on assumptions and bias of the other gender. Is it just women doing this? No. We got a lot of men who want to hate all men too. Now, I noticed that most of these man-hating men are trying to impress women who are feminists. Like, if you hate men as much as many females seem to, that somehow these females will magically date you. No, you're a fucking sissy, dude. And I don't mean gay. I mean weak. Weak-minded. If you gotta change who you are for somebody else, you are no longer who you are. Does that make any sense? Probably not. So I'll give you an example. If you love kittens, but you're gonna pretend like you hate kittens because some girl you like doesn't like kittens, you still like kittens, stupid. I got to talk to my advocate. It's not an easy fight. Explaining to people that if they don't speak up, then the villains win. Well, it goes in one ear and out the other. A lot of these people, they go, oh, well, I can't help you, Sean. I got problems of my own. Well, that's great. That's terrific. Everybody in America is so self-absorbed that they're letting their rights be trampled just because it's not happening to them at this particular moment. Or because their rights are busy being trampled, they can't worry about anybody else's rights. Meanwhile, these are our rights. What a concept, right? So, I'm still in Nebraska. This is not my idea of home. My home was Boulder, Colorado. That's the only place I was ever allowed to be me. Don't get me wrong, I got harassed and picked on and teased and bullied and even assaulted in Boulder. But there were people who accepted me for me. A lot of the people who, well, this is all stuff that I said before Natalie Bollinger was killed. And it's only since then been proven over and over and over again. God bless America, right? Isn't that the answer that's going to fix everything? There's a lot of stuff that I covered before Natalie died. Like how men have to take the blame for almost everything. especially homeless men. Homeless men are your go-to scapegoats for everything. Unsolved murder must have been a homeless person. Somebody got raped and you didn't catch the perpetrator, throw some more hate at the homeless people. You don't have to outright accuse them. You just gotta throw a little flack their direction. Use the media to do it. That's a popular tactic for the police. Have the media attack them. The police leak out a little bit of false information, and lo and behold, the general public is going after an innocent person. And that's how fast it works. Let's say you're in an area like Denver, Colorado. Denver 7 News has up to 2 million viewers per night. Because it's not just people in Denver who are watching. So one police officer tells one little lie to one news station, and lo and behold, you got innocent people being killed. And literally, this is happening. I get told what I owe soldiers, how they're keeping us safe. How they're keeping us safe from foreign rapists. Meanwhile, 8 years ago, 30% of women in the military had been raped. Mostly by American soldiers. These soldiers who are supposedly fighting for our rights. These soldiers who I supposedly owe for rights that, oh yeah, I don't have. If you are killing people in Afghanistan or Iraq for my rights that I don't have, number one, you're fighting in the wrong place. Number two, you're fighting the wrong people. I am here in the United States where our rights are being trampled, and I am speaking out. I am the one fighting for our rights. Now, in the last 8 years, the number of rapes in the military just keeps on increasing. It's higher than 30% now. How gross is that? I take abuse every single day, whether it's physical abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse, or the abuse that comes from having your credit destroyed. My credit is horrible. My credit score is 98. That's from being railroaded in court. That's from being victimized by the media and law enforcement. That's because of the term mentally ill. Then we've got human trafficking. There's people like me who are trying to do something about it. And then there's law enforcement who's doing the opposite. There have been multiple news agencies that have reported in the state of Colorado on how many police officers in the state of Colorado have taken part in rapes, sexual assaults, sexual misconduct. And it's a lot. Many of these officers have histories of doing these things over and over again before they got busted. There was an officer in the same county that Natalie Bollinger was killed in 2017. In 2018, a 27-year veteran of the police force there got busted raping a mentally ill woman on the hood of his patrol vehicle. He was supposed to be giving her a courtesy ride home. I'm sure he thought that's exactly what she needed. After having a rough time being depressed over the abuse that she had to take, she ended up in the hospital. And that officer was supposed to give her a courtesy ride home from that hospital. And what did he do? He raped her. There was a woman from Canada who spoke up too. She was human trafficked and taken to the great state of Colorado, where many of her abusers were police officers. We're mostly talking about women right now, aren't we? There was a group of human traffickers from South America coming up across the border, and they had little boys, some of them as young as 9 years old. They were supposed to be for the American sex trade. You know, I find it hard to respect police officers or soldiers for a reason. I posted up a few videos on my Facebook about the human trafficking and the rapes in the military. Some of these people were raped and killed. Some of them were dishonorably discharged while their predators were given promotions. Some of these victims committed suicide. But there's also the fact that these things happen to boys too, and also to grown men. The police, as far as spousal abuse goes, police are number one on the list for abusing their spouses. They're also number one on the list for getting away with it. Nazis protect Nazis. Christians protect Christians. And military personnel, well, you know where this is going now, don't you? There's got to be a way to stop this. And there is. It's called people working together. This is why there are no good people left. If a police officer is raping your next door neighbor, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to watch? Are you going to turn the other cheek? Are you going to close the drapes and turn up your TV? Because you sure as hell ain't going to go out there and do a goddamn thing about it. My predators, many of them, are in a lot of trouble because the things that I told on them for, they did to other people after they did those things to me. When I told on Clearview for assaulting me and forcing drugs into my system that I did not need, I told on them. Nobody listened. And later on, Tibor Hatay was killed. I told on Waylon Lolatai for assaulting me. Nobody listened. He assaulted at least 6 more homeless people in 2018. Moral of the story: when you blow off the victims, the predators have even more access to more victims. How many victims are they going to roll through before something actually happens? How many women did that officer rape in his 27-year career that he got away with? A lot of people keep trying to pretend like these are isolated instances. No, they're not. The only thing that isolates any of these instances from the millions of instances just like it that nothing is done about every year is that in some of these cases something is done. What does it take? Well, for starters, a family that gives a shit. What it takes to stop this, to end this, to do something about it, is actually the opposite of the advice that people want to give. They say, just let it go. That guy who raped you in high school, and you just let it go. And then he raped people in college, and they just let it go. Then he gets hired on at a local police department and has more victims who just have to let it go until somebody listens to the victim and says, I'm in this to win it. When that woman was raped in Adams County, Colorado, by that officer, well, you can turn off your body cam, but he didn't turn off his patrol cam. His own vehicle recorded him raping a woman on the hood of his patrol car. How many times did he get away with harming people before that? How many rapes did he commit in that amount of time? How many bad deputies has the sheriff here in Chapel, Nebraska covered for? See, here's the number one tactic for when police brutalize innocent people. The number one tactic when they're caught red-handed is to let that officer go to another jurisdiction and do it all over again. Waylon Lolatai assaulted a man in Denver while he was a police officer in Denver. So they let him move on to a different jurisdiction, Boulder, Colorado, where he assaulted a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that are pissed off that this was allowed to happen. While I spoke out about Waylon Lolatai and Clearview all the way back at the very beginning of 2018, the media did not pick up either of those cases until 2019. They ignored what Clearview did to me and pretended like I didn't speak out. Matter of fact, they outright pretended I didn't exist. And when I called them up, they berated me and trashed me and blocked me. The slander against me does not fit their idea of a victim. I don't have the right genitalia to be a victim. I'm not the right skin color to be a victim. And yet, Officer Waylon Lolatai is darker than Sammy Leon Lawrence IV, who is claiming that he was assaulted for racist reasons, apparently. He's darker than Zaid Atkinson, and if you guys know anything about that case, well, you might have watched 60 Minutes. Waylon Lolatai was there for that situation too, as well as the situation with Michelle Rodriguez. When he was forced to leave the Boulder Police Department due to his immoral conduct, he was allowed to move on again. Sheriff Scott DaCosta, here in Chapel, Nebraska, has done that repeatedly with his officers. The thing that pissed off so many people about Waylon Lolatai, and what both Denver and Boulder Police Department chose to do with him, which is let him walk away scot-free, no consequences. Scott DaCosta has done for no less than 6 dual county deputies. 6. He allowed them to travel to other states where they could not be pursued. Scott DaCosta knew exactly what I was doing, and he took every step that he could to prevent the truth from being shown. Before Natalie died, I didn't know that Scott DaCosta existed. But his deputies were aware that something screwed up was going on. They kept doing what people do to boys or men, blowing us off, especially if you're homeless. This town is a town of about 500 people. There are only 2 towns in Dual County, and between the 2 towns and their populations combined, it's still less than 1,000 people. There is no police department here. It is just the sheriff's department. When there was safety issues with the sheriff's department here after Natalie's death, I tried repeatedly to get a hold of who I was told I was supposed to. I was told I needed to get a hold of the Nebraska Attorney General's office. And they told me I had to talk to the State Patrol, told me I had to talk to the FBI. FBI told me I got to talk to the State Patrol, or I got to talk to the Nebraska Attorney General's office. Ultimately, they told me that I had to talk to the Dual County Sheriff's Department if I wanted to turn in the Dual County Sheriff. Makes no goddamn sense. That would be like that woman who was raped having to file a report and hand it to her rapist. Every time that I went to the Dual County Sheriff's Department for actual help about the abuse that I've been enduring, they blew me off. Their number one tactic, obviously, is to allow that officer to go where they can't be pursued for the crimes that they committed. But there's a lot of stuff that they do beforehand. When you try to tell on their officers, the first thing they try to do is blow you off. If that doesn't work, they try to intimidate you. If that doesn't work, they trump up charges and lock you up. If you are still pursuing the son of a bitches who wronged you, who want to wear badges and hide behind them, that's when they allow these people to move on. Scott DaCosta allowed Cody Selhorst, who was one of my predators with a badge in this town, to move to South Dakota to be an officer there. There's Officer Jordan Anderson, who Sheriff DaCosta also allowed to move out of state. Then there is Deputy Jared Hahn. Now, Jared Hahn was released from the sheriff's department, and the sheriff tried to lead me on to believe that Jared Hahn was no longer in Chapel because he had taken a new job with the Parks and Game Commission. Well, Hahn did not move out of town. Matter of fact, there's a sheriff's vehicle parked outside of his house every night. And in a small town like this, when you're a sheriff's deputy, you park the vehicle outside of your house. So that leads me to believe that Hahn is again a sheriff's deputy here in Chapel, Nebraska. He does belong in prison. That's where he should be. Sorry, folks, about the breathing weird. I'm going for a walk in Chapel, Nebraska at, what is it, like 2 o'clock in the morning? Got a lot of stress going on, though. You got these ideas in your head. The same rhetoric that's been pounded into all of our heads since we were kids. I remember saying the Pledge of Allegiance, being told about the freedom that we don't actually have, being told about the rights that we don't actually have. One of the things that I posted on Facebook about the military, it talks about how people in the military don't have options that the rest of us do as far as the courts go. And then when that lady started naming off the things that people in the military don't have the right to, that the rest of us supposedly do, it was all stuff that we don't. We don't actually have those rights. On paper, maybe. You know, on paper, slavery was illegal in the United States for years before the last slaves were freed. But then again, the 13th Amendment didn't actually free the slaves. It made slavery a state-run institution. If you are if you are found guilty of a crime, then you can be used for slave labor. That's a lot of incentive, as far as money goes, for states to incarcerate poor people. Obviously, poor people are not going to have the money for a real lawyer. Without the money for a real lawyer for your criminal case, they're not going to have a criminal case against these officers, and you have to sue them. The officers, when you try to turn in an officer for a crime that he committed, these officers aren't going to do their job and actually investigate the crime. Instead, they're going to tell you that you can get a lawyer when you get out. No, the fuck you can't. The law is not dependent upon what's right and wrong. It's dependent upon if you have the money to pay somebody to actually do their job. Public pretenders do not do their job. And then they give you excuses. You, the victim of police brutality, are told that your public pretender can't do their job because they have an overwhelming caseload. Excuse me, that's not my fault. It's not my fault that you can't do your job. However, if you are not going to do your job, then you need to move on. If you are going to be a public defender, you need to defend the public which you are assigned. My public pretenders did not do that. We always talk about the courts and how they're supposed to find the truth and see that justice is served. But if you've actually ever been in a courtroom, you know that it's not